and welcome to the Global Travel Planning Podcast. I'm your host, Tracy Collins, who, with my expert guests, will take you on a weekly journey to destinations around the globe, providing travel inspiration, itinerary ideas, practical tips, and more to help you plan your next travel adventure. Hi and welcome to episode 27 of the Global Travel Planner Podcast. Today I'm excited to chat with John Cortese of Tripiamo. Now, Tripiamo's mission is to transform the way you travel by providing comprehensive professional guidance for self-driving anywhere in the world, and so far they've produced guides for 6 countries with more in the pipeline. Now, much as I love train travel, I also know that self-driving offers unparalleled flexibility and the chance to explore areas that can be inaccessible or just more tricky to get around by public transport. But I also know that driving in a foreign country can feel intimidating due to unfamiliar rules and customs and the potential challenge of driving on the opposite side of the road. This is where Tripiamo comes in, offering an innovative online guide designed to help you navigate these challenges, providing a sense of reassurance and relief from driving anxiety. Now, we believe Tripiamo is an excellent product and have chatted with John twice on the UK Travel Planning Podcast, episodes 12 and 112. And since our very first podcast episode with John, the fantastic reviews we've had from readers, listeners, and members of our UK Travel Planning Facebook community have backed this up. So John was an obvious guest to speak with on the Global Travel Planning community all about Tripiamo. Stick around to the end of the podcast where I reveal a special discount offer exclusive for Global Travel Planning podcast listeners. I started the chat by asking John to introduce himself and share a little about his background.
I'm really happy to be here. Thank you so much, Tracy, for having me on the second podcast here. My name is John Cortese. I'm the founder of Tripiamo. I started Tripiamo during the pandemic, actually. And I'm really an avid traveler. So Tracy's heard my story before, but I'm an Italian American. I grew up in the New York area. And I've just loved travel since an early age. And this is a true story. I traveled as a young kid to Sicily to visit my family. And I really remember looking out into the Mediterranean and always thinking about what was out there, what was beyond those seas, right? And I wanted to see more and experience different cultures. So I spent the next 10, 15, 20 years of my life traveling for work, fun, leisure, everything else in between. Unfortunately, I've been able to get to over 60 countries across the globe, and it's just been an incredible ride. So with that, right, I've also, as I mentioned to you before, I've worked in the travel industry prior to starting Tripiamo. I worked both at MasterCard and Visa, and particularly at Visa right before I left and started Tripiamo. I led their business development and economic trending in the travel and tourism industry. So I worked with all the major players in travel you can think of around the globe to help them understand how people were moving around the world from a tourism perspective. And part of the reason, I have lots of reasons why I started Tripiamo, but that's kind of one of the foundational points around it.
And we met because obviously I've got my UK travel planning websites and on the podcast, and you chatted to me on episode 12 all about using Tripiamo to help if you were planning to drive in the UK. But you also have guides to multiple destinations around the world. And so this is a perfect fit for global travel planning because we can talk about all the other destinations. So I think it would be really cool actually to kind of say from the outset where you do cover in the world. And then we can get on to talking about what the product is and how it helps people prepare and help them when they're driving in another country.
Yeah, well, we are expanding significantly. But as Tracy knows, just about a year or two ago, we were at our foundations with just the UK. We're now across the UK. We're in Italy, we're in Ireland, we're in France, Germany, and Spain. And I think that's all of them as of right now. And we're continuing to expand based on really great feedback and the requests from our customers and others in looking to drive in other places across the world. So our goal is to eventually help people travel and self-drive safely anywhere in the world.
Perfect. So you started off with the UK. That was brilliant. And I know you've covered the Republic of Ireland now because we've talked about that as well. So I'm used to driving on the left. And we've just actually talked about this on the UK Travel Planning podcast. The fact that even though I'm used to driving on the left, for me, the UK one is still invaluable because it helps me to prepare in terms of remembering what the roads are like and the different road signs and the rules and the etiquette, because you do forget. But also, I think what's invaluable is, I don't drive on the right. So that would scare me a little bit. So even if you do drive on the right and you're thinking, oh, well, I'm used to driving on the right-hand side. So what's going to be so different about driving in Italy or in Spain or in Germany? But I think that's invaluable that you do provide resources for that because it's very different, isn't it?
It is. So regardless of, let's say, where you're coming from, you may be listening and coming from Australia, South Africa, New Zealand, Canada, the United States. Regardless, right? This could be a solution that's helpful for you to orient yourself, not just for driving on whichever side of the road, which we do, and I'll talk about that in a little bit, but it's all about learning all of the other aspects of what it's like to drive in those places. Yes, you probably have your driver's license, and hopefully you do if you're going to get behind the wheel in another country from your home country, right? But there are a lot of differences from road signs, road rules, cultural etiquette, and a lot of other things to talk about as well. And so what we do is make sure we give you all of the learning and knowledge you need to feel confident to drive in any of those places, whether you're coming from a place that drives on the opposite side or the same side. And as it relates to driving on the opposite side, so let's say you're from Australia and you're going to Italy, or you're from the United States and you're going to Ireland or the UK, we provide lots of practice and real life footage. So we have a team of videographers that goes out across each country and drives in urban, rural, suburban areas and actually gives you the experience of what it's like to drive in those places before you get there. So not only are you learning the practical rules and regulations, but you actually have the experience so that by the time you get there, you're able to drive like a local.
Ah, perfect. So if I'm planning to go to Italy, which I'm always planning to go to Italy, to be honest, and I think, okay, let me pop over and I'm going to buy the Tripiamo guide. What do I get and how's it going to help me?
So yeah, regardless of whatever country you're going to, we have a variety of different types of learning materials, all accessible on demand on your phone, your laptop, your desktop, wherever you want. And it all takes just about an hour or so to complete at any pace that you'd like. So what comes with it? So there's a kind of a few different areas, but before I actually go into any of them, let me just say all of the content that we create is vetted one by experts. We have a team that's driven across the world. We know the differences. We've read the driving manuals for you in each country, and we know what you need to know. But more importantly, all of our guides are certified and verified by driving schools and driving instructors in each country. So we really want to make sure we give you all the most accurate and relevant information in a short amount of time without it really feeling like you're taking a driver's ed course. It's really meant for vacationers. So first and foremost, we have a series of short micro videos, what we call expert instructional videos. These are anywhere from 2 to 5 minutes, 6, 7 minutes, and they really give you all the foundational and fundamental information you need to know that are different, that are the rule. All of the information you really need to know that it's different between countries. So let's say you're going to Italy and knowing what are parking rules and parking signs in Italy. That's something that does mess up a lot of people when they go to Italy. They just don't know what they're looking at and what signs mean, and something can happen to their car potentially. Road signs, as I mentioned, rules, cultural etiquette, how to navigate through roundabouts. Particularly, I'll go back to cultural etiquette for a second for Italy. Italy is very well known for being a very aggressive place to drive compared to other countries, to say it lightly. So something like that, having the experience and knowing what you're getting into beforehand is really important. I'll even say, particularly for countries that speak other languages, we have videos that are just focused on gas stations and like I said, road signs, things in different languages, but particularly I'll mention gas stations. You don't realize until you get there how different, and how you may get out of the car and start looking to fill up your tank and have really no idea what you're doing, because different language signs, different types of gas, right? Diesel. We've heard tons of different crazy stories. Those are different examples of things we cover. We also cover different types of road environments. If you're coming from a place like Australia or the United States, you may not be used to really, really tight medieval roads on small different mountainside villages in France or in Spain or in Italy. So we cover all of those things. So secondly, we have a series of what we call 360-degree driving tours. And what these are is the ability for you, before you actually get to these countries, to feel and practice what it's actually like to drive in these places. So we film behind the wheel across each country, as I mentioned, in urban, rural, suburban areas across each country, so that you actually have the experience of what it's like, and you don't get tripped up by the time you get there. So you know exactly what to expect. That's been the piece for our customers that they found the most valuable. They keep coming back to us and saying things like, I never even thought I would be able to drive in a place like this, or I didn't even think it was possible. But I used your guide and I actually felt confident to do it because I already knew what was going on, and I felt confident before I got behind the wheel when I got to that country. So those 360 videos, as I mentioned, we have footage also for people that are driving on the opposite side of the road. This is incredibly valuable, so that you actually just start reorienting your brain by just watching these videos and understand how to navigate, how to turn, what it's like to go through a roundabout that's in an opposite direction. These are simple things, but really can profoundly change your trip if you have those practice and experience. I know I'm keep going on here, Tracy, but want to make sure I tell people what they're getting.
No, it's good. This is good stuff, John. Honestly, when you just mentioned that about the petrol stations called in the UK gas stations, that's totally invaluable information, because I tell you something, I get incredibly stressed with that, and I've heard horror stories. And actually, we had friends from Canada who came to the UK, just about the UK, and they put in the wrong petrol in the car. Because I think they put leaded and unleaded. At one point, you can still get leaded. I don't know if you still can in the UK actually, but and they put in the wrong type of petrol in the car, and then, or it might have actually been petrol in a diesel car, or diesel in a petrol car, one of those, and it cost them a fortune because it was a hire car. It was a complete disaster.
So that's very very much the case that we've seen with a lot of folks, and it's super avoidable if you just kind of have that information beforehand. Not to scare folks, because driving, and Tracy, you know this as well, has provided me, and I'm a city boy. I live in New York City, so I'm a big public transit advocate. But driving just provides such an incredible opportunity to see a place in a different way. But making sure you know what you're doing. So here's another example. When I was building Tripiamo originally, I interviewed an American man that worked for the US government. He rented a car at the Rome airport, drove down to the Rome city center, more or less, and he was looking for parking around the US embassy. He circled for about 30 minutes looking for parking, which is a little bit challenging in a city like Rome. But he didn't realize what certain signs in Italian meant. And he got 700 euros in fines in those 30 minutes. And
Wow.
but that's something that's completely avoidable. And it doesn't happen to most folks, but it's just one of those crazy stories, right?
But I think
go ahead.
I think it's important to say those things, because to buy a Tripiamo guide, it's not expensive. But and we're not going to hark on about horror stories, but I just know, if I hear from people saying I got a fine for parking because I wasn't sure where I was going to park. I got a fine for speeding because I didn't realize that was the speed limit, or I went on a bus lane, or this is again UK I hear a lot about, or I was turning right and I ended up on a box junction and the traffic lights turned red, and then I got a fine because I was stuck in the box junction, and it's that sort of thing that if you don't know about. But it's easy to find out about because you can just buy your course.
Yeah, and everything, like we said, is verified by driving schools. We give it to you in short micro videos that you can watch online, experiential videos that you can actually sit behind the wheel. And we even provide a downloadable printout that actually gives this information to you while you're on the road. So you don't feel like you have to memorize everything, but let's say you see something and you're not really sure what it means. We give you the basics. We give you all that information, emergency information, translations, main information that you may need between each country to interact with just someone asking them, hey, can I park here? Or where do I get a ticket to purchase parking? Or things like that, may give you a lot of stress before your trip that you have to think about. We really want to take care of it. I've started this, and one of the reasons is because I had these challenges myself, and I really didn't see any source that really was reliable. Yes, you can, find some information online, but something that's really going to be everything you need so that you have no stress and no worries while you're on the road.
And as you say, completely well researched, and you go through all of those strenuous checks to make sure that what you're providing. Because I've had people say, "Oh, I'll go on YouTube and I'll watch a video." Well, you know what? I wouldn't do that. I would prefer to know, if I'm going to prepare, that it's something up to date and that's checked, and just say it's all verified and you're very stringent about what you produce, so you can be confident when you have a Tripiamo guide that you're going to be really well prepared, and not only before you go, but as you say, when you're actually traveling as well, to kind of it's like preparing to, like, for an exam. It's like, if you don't prepare before you go into the exam, you just are completely like, oh, what am I going to do? Or you don't prepare well enough. Where is, if you give yourself that preparation, sit, watch videos, read your resources, I think just the fact that you have that preparation already reduces the stress, because it's stressful. I driving in a country that you're not familiar with, even if it's on the same side of the road. I know I keep harking on about that, but I hear so often people say, well, it's the same side of the road, so what's different? A lot of things are different. It's invaluable to have that preparation.
It is. And I'll just say this again. I know, there's challenges to it. Absolutely. Right. We've talked about some of the challenges that people have, but I just want to emphasize again, even as someone that, like I said, uses public transit every day in my normal daily life, driving in another country provides such a profoundly different and incredible opportunity to see a place. Let's just take, we've mentioned Italy a couple times. I'll mention it again. Absolutely. If it's your first time to Italy, I recommend going to Rome, the Colosseum, take a trip to Venice, to Florence. But Italy is so much more than that. As an example, I know, a hot place right now is Sicily. Sicily is an incredible place. There's really little public transit, but it's an incredible place to see by car. Some of the best Greek ruins, ancient ruins on the planet, are across that island. Across France, imagine going through Provence or through Normandy in a car and not just seeing the Eiffel Tower, or the UK and going to the Scottish Highlands. We talked about that in the last episode. The UK is so much more than just London, although I'm obsessed with London. I think it's an incredible city. That's really why we've created this, right? Because we don't, yes, like you said, you can watch a YouTube video online. It's going to give you, some helpful information, but nothing in my eyes, as someone that's traveled pretty extensively, felt like I really was prepared. And that's what I wanted to make with this, so that regardless of where I was going in the world, I felt like I was a local before I got behind the wheel.
Oh, that's brilliant. That's a great quote. I'm going to use that quote. I think what's really important as well that's coming out of this, and we're big advocates for traveling by train wherever we go in the world. We love traveling by train, but you're absolutely right. Being able to get behind the wheel of a car and drive yourself through some of these places opens up a completely different world to you. Like, say, in the far north of Scotland, going down to Cornwall, driving around the Cotswolds. You're selling, I've not been to Sicily, but you've totally sold it to me. And just the thought of being able to do that and feel confident about it is invaluable. It really is invaluable. So, I mean, it's a fantastic, you saw that was a product that wasn't out there, something that you wanted yourself. So the best way to do it is create it, which is exactly what you have done.
Yeah. And so just on that point, right, I will say this too, right? If you're going to, I'll say this as an example. Let's say you're going to Spain and you're just going to Barcelona and Madrid. Absolutely, it doesn't make sense to take a car because there's incredible public transit between those cities and within those cities. So that's the type of trip you're taking, and that's maybe all you have time for. But there's so much more to see. A car allows you the flexibility so that if you're not on a tour bus and you see something on the side of the road, like a small little mom and pop restaurant that you want to stop in and be amongst the locals, you could do that in a car. You don't have to worry about train strikes or waking up at 5 a.m. to make sure you're at the train station for your check-in, whatever. You can do it at your own leisure, on your own pace, right? With multiple people also, right? For those that are budget travelers, I know sometimes it could be an expensive piece of a trip, but if you're traveling with several people, it actually, in many instances, can be a pretty budget savvy move too. So.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And so you've obviously covering quite a few countries now. So have you got plans for the future in terms of where you may be expanding to?
We absolutely do. I am going to hold off on saying where our next countries are. But
no, that's fine.
Our plan, like I said, right, and one of my dreams is to be able to drive anywhere in the world. I was just talking to Tracy about this actually right as we were joining the podcast, but about driving in Bolivia, and it was just this incredible experience for me. But that was another place. I'm not saying that will be our next country, but I want to be able to provide this experience for everyone anywhere in the world, right? I think it's not only a way for you to experience new cultures, but it's a way for us to bring the world closer together, right? If everyone feels confident to be able to navigate another country like a local anywhere in the world, that's the kind of place that I want to see in the future. So I want to help, if I can, build that as well.
Oh, no, absolutely. That sounds brilliant. Honestly, it really does. And we've got an exclusive discount as well from you guys, which is brilliant for Global Travel Planning Podcast listeners. And that's a 10% discount, which is valid until September the 30th. And you will need to go through the link in the show notes, which are at globaltravelplanning.com/episode 27. And the code that you need to use is GTP 2024. So if you use that at checkout until the 30th of September, you'll get 10% off. But I will say that your guides are incredibly affordable and accessible for all. You have made them extremely reasonable for what you offer is fantastic.
Yeah, well, thank you, Tracy. I think that's my point, and we want to really continue to make travel accessible for everyone. So, and I say this: the price of our guide is less than a parking ticket. So, we really want to make it something that allows you to really confidently and safely drive anywhere in the world. So, that's a little bit about us. And just so you know, also for any folks that are maybe interested, you do have access to the guides for up to a full year. So you can use it as many times as you'd like to get yourself prepared, either before your trip, while you're there in the hotel, before you pick up the rental car, or wherever you may be.
Oh, perfect. And I always end the podcast with the same question. So I'm going to ask you, what would be your one tip for anybody who's planning a driving holiday somewhere else in the world to where they live? So it could be anywhere in the world. What would be your one tip to help them prepare?
A lot of it depends where and what country you're going to. But can I say you should use a Tripiamo guide as the tip? No, I'm kidding.
Absolutely.
No.
I would say that.
No, I'll bring up. I'm going to bring up. I know we've mentioned Italy a few times here, but this is just one. I know it's a very popular country for driving, and it's an example of the type of content we would provide you in your Tripiamo guide. There's something a lot of cities and small towns in Italy have called a zona traffico limitato, ZTL zone. And so you can't drive into these city centers unless you're a resident or you have a specific permit. You don't really recognize the signs in all instances, and it's something that trips up a lot of foreigners. So just be aware of them, do your research beforehand, potentially use a Tripiamo guide. We have that and much more to cover for you and help you along your journeys.
Oh, great. It's been brilliant to chat to you again, John. Honestly, this is the third podcast we've done together now. So 2 on the UK travel planning, 1 on global travel planning. Honestly, I think this is episode 27 of the Global Travel Planning podcast. So I'll be inviting you back on episode 127 just so that you're prepared.
I can't wait. And I can't wait to have more countries out for us to talk about and new adventures.
Oh, well, it'll be brilliant. By the time we get episode 127, there's going to be a whole load more that you're going to be able to tell us about. So that's brilliant. So thanks so much for coming on this podcast.
I don't know if we're going to have 127 countries by then, but I can't wait to be on it as well. So we can't wait, Tracy. Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Global Travel Planning Podcast. For more details and links to everything we discussed today, check out the show notes at globaltravelplanning.com. Remember, if you enjoyed the show, please consider leaving us a review on your favorite podcast app because your feedback helps us reach more travel enthusiasts just like you. Anyway, that leaves me to say, as always, happy global travel planning.